work and on appearing professional, that she felt, rather than saw, the girl's hands wrap around her throat. She jerked back, shocked, and the stethoscope clattered to the floor. She had received staff training in handling patient aggression, but it had concentrated on de-escalation and intervention before the patient acted out. Nothing had prepared her for this. The hands around her throat were not large, but the grip was surprisingly strong. Francois tried to break it with her own hands, but she couldn't hook her fingers underneath to get any leverage. She made to say something in protest, but all that came out was a squeak, the last escaping air from a burst balloon. She grabbed the girl's wrists instead and pulled. It made no difference. Her neck hurt, and the pain radiated up and over her skull. The fingers were like metal bands. Francois was panicking properly now. She wanted to take a breath. She needed to take a breath. The girl looked horribly calm. She wasn't smiling, and there was no spark of excitement in her eyes. She looked, instead, uninterested, like she was ticking a task from a to-do list or carrying out an order. In an awful moment, Francois realised that, even if she were able to speak, she wouldn't be able to reason with her attacker. She knew with utter certainty that the girl meant to kill her, was going to kill her. Francois forced herself up, kicking the chair away and using her whole body to try and break the grip. The girl held her upright easily, as if she were a fraction of her size, rather than the same height and build. Francois leaned backwards with all her weight, hoping to pull the girl over, maybe break her grip just enough to pull her hands away and get some air. The pain she'd felt when the hands had begun squeezing had receded now. It was taken over by this screaming desperation in her mind and stabbing sensation across her chest as her lungs cried out for oxygen. Her head pounded and then began to swim, as if she'd been punched hard in the temple. With terrifying speed, Francois felt a kind of calm acceptance. There was a blank whiteness advancing from the right, pulling a curtain across her mind. In the part that was still functioning, she noted the symptoms of oxygen deprivation, listed the side effects and expected time of death. She knew that her windpipe had been compressed. The force of the grip was strong enough. She knew that she didn't have long and that she was actively experiencing brain damage. It was the kind of thing she could have written up for a medical journal if she had the time. There was never any time, though, the days bleeding together in one long helter-skelter ride. She was going faster and faster. The lights were blinking on and off. Then the curtains swished fully, and all was white, pure, blinding white. Chapter 1. Rose opened her eyes and the world rushed in. Sky, pavement, Scottish Georgian architecture, and a biting edge to the air. The dizziness and disorientation never lasted for long, and, sure enough, she was already beginning to feel balanced. She was outside the refurbished 1960 psychology block on George Square, the large panes of glass and slabs of concrete achingly familiar. Her mind was foggy and her eyes stung as if she hadn't slept well. But the world was no longer spinning and the sense of essential wrongness was receding. She shook her head lightly, as if to clear it. She wasn't meant to be here. She had been somewhere else. She had been inside, she was almost sure, or she'd been watching people who were inside, somewhere very clean and white, and with a big curtain which swished on its track. A group of students walked past her and into the building. Their laughter was too loud, and it grated against her nerves, but it made something click. She was Rose MacLeod. She was a student. She'd been asleep in bed, or maybe she'd been watching a television drama, but then she'd passed out and lost a chunk of time. That happened. She did the usual post-blackout check, digging into her pocket and checking the date and time on her mobile phone. The sunlight was as weak as usual, but it still felt too bright, and she wished she had remembered her sunglasses. Of course, she couldn't actually remember leaving the house. One moment she had been in bed, she was almost sure she'd been in bed, stretching out and feeling the covers slip and slide over her body. And the next, she had simply arrived here, in this place. She had her rucksack, thankfully, and her notepad.